Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frans Stukman. I'm the moderator for today's session on the Sustainable Fuels webinar. So it is my pleasure to introduce the panelists for today's this afternoon session on Sustainable Fuels webinar. First of all, Eva Abromient-Leté, she's the Secretary General of Sustainable Fuels. She's an expert in EU energy, has been working for CEFIC and in this field over the past decade, has been also working for various organizations, including Fleishman Hillard. So a big welcome to you, Eva, on this panel this afternoon. Also my pleasure and my privilege to introduce Angelika Niebler. I was informed that you were dialing in live from the European Parliament, but I'm not sure that is the case today if I look at the surroundings, but nonetheless, very welcome. She's a member of the European Parliament since 1999, currently member of the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, and she is from the Christian Democrats Party, for those who want to know. She's German and a lawyer by background. A very warm welcome to you this afternoon, and we're very pleased that you're attending this panel, and looking forward to your comments and support. Joining us from Austria, following Brussels, is Dina Bakovsky. She's the head of the unit biofuels at BEST. The biofuel sustainable technologies, interesting position in technology cooperation programs at the EIA, the International Energy Agency, on two particular strands. One is in advanced motor fuels, TCP, and the other one is the IEA Bioenergy, TCP. She's representing Austria there in tasks in the liquid biofuels. She's a process engineer from Vienna University of Technology. So a very big welcome to you as well. I trust you can hear me all right. Then dialing in from Germany, two gentlemen. Very welcome to Norbert Schmitz. He has been since 2010 the managing director of ISCC, the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification Agency, a certification scheme leading in the world. Some 100 countries and some 4,000 companies are registered and make use of it. We're focused on Europe, America, and Southeast Asia. So some global dimensions there in the panel this afternoon as well. Welcome to you, Norbert. Welcome to Michael Toll. He's a member of the board of Sustainable Fuels, also well known to that respect, and also the head of the marketing segment for fuel components, the performance intermediates at Evonik. Before joining Evonik, he worked several years at the pharmaceutical industry, and he has a bachelor degree in industrial management. So again, a new angle and a diverse angle to this afternoon's panelists. Welcome everybody. I hope this afternoon will be worth your while. For the audience, please enjoy this afternoon's session and be looking forward to your active participation. You can ask questions through the chat function of this WebEx provided webcast. The technicians will see that, and we have assistance from Daphne, who is having a look at the questions that are being raised. Welcome to you, Daphne, and thanks for your support, Evan. And you can also ask questions through email at info@Petrochemistry Europe, our department in CEFIC. That will take a little bit longer because we're not immediately responding to those, but if you, in reflection, you've got these questions, you can also do them by email, and we will answer them short and concise if they are in very due course. As said, this session is also meant to launch the 2050 vision document on sustainable fuels going forward. And I'd like sort of to kick that particular session off now. By just asking some key questions to Michael. Michael, I trust you can hear me. If we look at that vision document, we've seen it's crisp now, colorful, and it's got, you know, the drive and the mobility that we need. But can you sort of, to the audience, give your views on the challenge you see for the transport sector in Europe between now and 2050?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining today's webinar with participants basically dialing in from all over this world. Maybe before starting to answer your question, Frans, I would like to go to the next chart and make a quick introduction to Sustainable Fuels, who we are and what we basically do. So Sustainable Fuels Europe is a sector group within the European Chemical Industry Council called CEFIC. It basically represents fuel ether producers with a European footprint and is part of in total 3 global ether trade associations. We as an industry are dedicated to the responsible production, usage and promotion of clean, high quality, and especially also high efficiency gasoline components. Franz, coming to your question and going to the next chart, challenges for transportation. Well, first of all, according to the European Automobile Manufacturer Association, ACEA, there are approximately 300 million vehicles in circulation on Europe's roads today. Passenger cars account with approximately 270 million units for a major share within the European mobility, enabling all of us to commute and travel without borders. Well, with most recent COVID-19 challenges and especially the restrictions, individual mobility became a crucial foundation of our society, probably more than ever. As all of we know, in December 2019, the European Commission published the, let's say, path-breaking European Green Deal. It's basically an umbrella framework of the EU's decarbonization strategy. Its ambitious core is to completely decarbonize to net zero emission by 2050 and set higher intermediate targets for the EU in 2030. Since it's an umbrella agreement, it comes with several sectorial targets, and obviously the one sector we will be focusing on today is transport. Transport, according to the European Commission, accounts for a quarter of EU greenhouse gas emissions, which emphasizes on the one hand the significance, but on the other hand also the potential of this sector. Regulatory framework is typically being established by the European Union, such as RED2, but as we know, it's up to the single member states how exactly to transfer this EU legislation into national law. During the past, electrification played a major role in public decarbonization debates. In particular, in the mobility sector, full electrification of road transport alone may require a higher level of social and economic change than if it's complemented by other technologies. Therefore, when used in combination with electric vehicle technology, we consider liquid fuels like bio and e-fuels as a vital tool of indirect utilization of electricity. Coming back to your question, Franz, our challenge is to chart a sustainable path for transport, whether on land, by sea, or by air, whether for goods or for people. This path must protect the environment while preserving the right of every European to enjoy affordable transport wherever they are in Europe. European citizens must be able to access and benefit from our internal market in a cost-effective and sustainable way. The path should ensure Europe retains its leadership on fuel quality and air quality, and support the sector coupling of innovation drivers in chemical and refining. Our industry, the fuel ether industry, is fully aware of this importance of reducing the environmental footprint of the overall automotive fuel industry. And exactly this is the foundation of Sustainable Fuels Europe Vision 2050.
Thank you, Michael. I think that is a challenge and a contribution to make towards a great sustainable world. And then it looks like we're going to kickstart immediately with that. So thank you for that introductory answer to that question, Michael. I'd like to switch to Ewa. Ewa, we're also here this afternoon to launch the 2050 vision on sustainable fuels. So I guess to that respect, the floor is yours to enlighten the audience this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Franz. May I just ask to switch the slide to this one? Thank you very much. So thank you for joining this on this lovely afternoon, at least in Brussels. Let me start by saying that for Europe to achieve a carbon neutral target in 2050, we'll need a mix of solutions in the transport sector, which includes electric vehicles, carbon neutral liquid fuels, hybrid options, and bio-based fuel ethers. Liquid fuels are important for transport and will remain so for a considerable future. In fact, we think that also in 2050, we will see liquid fuels playing a key role. In order to achieve that, we will need to make sure that the liquid fuel mix is sustainable and climate neutral. At the same time, to succeed, while maintaining public support, the change needs to be fair, bearable, and of course, viable. Climate neutral liquid fuels and climate neutral electricity can work together to provide affordable and fair and sustainable mobility systems across all transport modes on a well-to-wheel life cycle assessment basis. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'm very pleased to present today our vision, which showcases a world where climate neutral liquid fuels and electricity work together in a sustainable and affordable mobility system. Let me paint a picture for you in which, as early as 2020s, a rapid shift to higher octane fuels, which uses existing infrastructure and new hybrid engines, brings sustainable transport to the mass consumer market. This has an immediate and positive impact on air quality in European cities, lowers CO2 emissions from the existing car fleet, and also limits job losses in the European automotive value chain. It also provides the political space for continued climate actions into the 2030s as new electricity infrastructure spending takes root and innovation in liquid fuel technology is spilling over into aviation and maritime fuels. As 2030s and 2040s are progressing, European solutions are adopted across Africa and parts of Asia, as other regions, sometimes without extensive electricity networks, are looking to find a cost-effective route to sustainable mobility. In Europe, our industry is continuing to invest on the basis of a shared destination of climate-neutral liquid fuels by 2050, with widespread adoption of e-fuels supplying a storage solution for access renewable electricity. In this world, we also witness a new recycling technologies and widespread adoption of biofeedstocks. The choices made by European policymakers and the innovation created by industry unleashes a new integrated, sustainable industrial base. It delivers climate-neutral liquid fuels, an innovation-rich sector of a climate-neutral economy aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It also positions Europe at the forefront of a reshaped global industry. Sounds good, isn't it? As an industry, we support the Paris Agreement and share the European Union's objective of achieving climate neutrality by 2050. In order to respond to the climate challenge, governments, industry, and civil society need to work together to deliver for Europe and demonstrate leadership for the world. We are definitely committed to this goal. And finally, in line with CEFIC mid-century vision, we can help European governments and regulators fully achieve the goal of climate neutrality and to ensure that a socially fair transition is possible for those most affected by the changes. We also can help accelerating the pace of change. Can I have a next slide, please? As I just mentioned, we will need a range of solutions which can help in reaching the goal of climate neutrality. Let me just name a couple of examples, such as high-octane fuels, advanced biofuels, 100% bio-ethers, bio-naphtha, biomass, waste-to-chemicals, and e-fuels. Furthermore, we will also need changes to how we produce and use these fuels. The unique strength of sustainable liquid fuels is their potential to enable technological advancements in climate-neutral hybrid technology, for instance, through increased efficiency or lower cycle emissions. They can be also used to utilize clean energy and emerging technologies to produce climate-neutral e-fuels. Sustainable liquid fuels can play an important role by enabling the storage of an enormous amount of clean energy at a local level. And according to several studies, both agroforestry and the renewable and recycled carbon fuels industry are ready to produce the feedstocks, such as biomass or waste, as well as technologies and systems and components needed by the industry along the value chain. Such liquid fuels can safeguard Europe's energy supply while delivering sustainable and affordable energy to European citizens. In the mobility sector, full electrification of road transport alone might require a higher level of social and economic change, but it can be complemented by other technology. Therefore, we think when used in combination with electric vehicle technology, liquid fuels like bio and e-fuels are a vital tool of indirect utilization of electricity. E-fuels, for instance, provide a high-density method of storing renewable electricity for later use in transport. The pathway seems to be clear, although, of course, some of the technological solutions need further development or scaling up. There is, however, still a lot to be done. We believe that, first of all, we need to find a common understanding with European policymakers that by 2050, climate neutral liquid fuels will be a key enabler of sustainable mobility as part of the European Green Deal. Secondly, we are happy to work with policymakers to identify and enact policies that enable the deployment of climate-neutral liquid fuels by 2050, starting with the measures actually identified in the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal states, for instance, that over a life cycle assessment, transport should become drastically less polluting, especially in cities, and that more stringent air pollution standards should be introduced for combustion engine vehicles. Thirdly, we should continue to benefit from existing competitive European strategic value chains, such as the automotive, refining, petrochemicals, as well as other industry sectors. In fact, we are ready and open for a collaboration with the automotive industry, the parts suppliers, refiners, chemicals, and agricultural sectors, as well as other interested parties, which I saw they joined today, to develop and promote solutions for the road transport. We are also open to start discussions with interested parties from the aviation and maritime transport about how sustainable fuels can contribute to the achievement of the climate neutral liquid fuels. Finally, we are also asking to further support research and research networks that work to improve our understanding of the technologies available now and in the future, and to deliver such, in order to deliver such climate neutral liquid fuels. That's it for now from my side, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present our vision. I very much look forward to the discussion part.
Thank you, Ewa. Thanks for that introduction to the Sustainable Fuels Vision 2050. I hear a lot of energy in your voice. I hear a lot of energy in your team. I also hear there's plenty of change and we want to accelerate the change. I also hear there is plenty of choice. There's plenty of choice in the mix. So we need to make that easy on the consumer at the end of the day. And it looks there is plenty of choice to support our mobility. And although I see a rear view mirror in this picture, I think this is very much about looking forward. So to that respect, Michael, what's your view on the sustainable fuels contribution to this vision as one of the key components to the fuel mix? Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Franz. Well, the chemical industry has its finger on the pulse of time. It strives for innovation, and Sustainable Fuels Europe is ready to contribute to the EU climate ambitions. We leverage solutions born in the chemical industry and make liquid fuels steadily cleaner, more cost-effective, and more efficient. In particular, and to answer your question, Franz, we do see the following solutions. Firstly, rapid lowering of emissions in a cost-efficient manner. Fuel ethers, as Eva just mentioned, can facilitate the rapid shift to higher octane fuel, which will have an immediate and positive impact on air quality in Europe's cities and CO2 emissions from the existing car fleet. Cars with high compression engines running on high octane fuel would provide an energy saving of at least 7% and 20 million less tons of CO2 from petrol engine cars annually, while also improving air quality. Secondly, cost-effective and practical methods of storing energy from renewables. Sustainable fuels and ether play an important role by enabling the storage of an enormous amount of clean energy at local level. Thirdly, the preservation of the resilience of Europe's energy supply. As all of we know, the COVID-19 crisis has revealed that the availability of critical goods during a crisis relies on a secure strategic supply chain and sufficient storage capacity while maintaining domestic production. Fourthly, advancements in sustainable hybrid fuel technology building on existing industrial base and applications. Fuel ethers can support the implementation of renewables utilizing existing infrastructure. By 2050, climate neutral fuels can be blended seamlessly into the liquid fuel mix while being compatible with existing and future technologies. And last but not least, what also Eva touched, continued utilization of chemical waste as a feedstock for fuel ethers. If we go to the next chart, I'm pleased to summarize the vision of Sustainable Fuels Europe. We, as Sustainable Fuels Europe, together with our partner associations, help European governments to fully achieve the goal of climate neutrality starting today, while ensuring a socially fair transition for Europe's citizens. As an industry, we support the Paris Agreement and share the European Union's objective of achieving climate neutrality in Europe by 2050. In order to respond to the climate challenge, governments, industry, and the whole society need to work together to deliver for Europe and demonstrate leadership. We as Sustainable Fuels are committed to this goal. Fuel ethers can facilitate the rapid shift to higher octane fuel, which will have an immediate and positive impact on air quality in Europe and reduce CO2 emissions from the existing car fleet. Solutions, as summarized by Eva, such as high-octane fuels, advanced biofuels, 100% bioethers, bio-naphtha, biomass, or waste-to-chemicals and e-fuels are some of the examples of a range of potential technical solutions. We, as Sustainable Fuels Europe, see a world in 2050 where climate neutral liquid fuels and electricity work together in a sustainable, affordable mobility system. If we go to the next chart, my Sustainable Fuels Europe board member colleague, Job Lindenberg, has summarized our vision in a nutshell in a 3 minutes video. We'll be sharing this video on YouTube among other communication channels too. Jo, the stage is yours.
Our industry, the fuel ethers industry, is fully aware of the importance of reducing the environmental footprint of the overall automotive and fuel industry. We share the European Union's objective of achieving climate neutrality in Europe by 2050. Our challenge is to chart a sustainable path for transport that protects the environment while preserving the right of every European to enjoy affordable transport. We see a world in 2050 where climate-neutral liquid fuels and electricity work together in a sustainable, affordable mobility system. A rapid shift to higher octane fuel will have an immediate and positive impact on air quality in Europe's cities and CO2 emissions from the existing car fleet. Over the coming decades, European solutions will be adopted across Africa and parts of Asia, as other regions, sometimes without extensive electricity networks, sought to find a cost-effective route to sustainable mobility. The choices made by the European policymakers and industry innovation will position Europe at the forefront of a reshaped global transport sector. The chemical and automotive industry are key to lay the foundation of a successful European future. Solutions such as high-octane fuels, advanced biofuels, 100% bioethers, bionaphtha, biomass or waste-to-fuels and e-fuels are some of the examples of a range of potential technical solutions. They deliver a much wider array of levers to pull and pursue a climate-neutral economy. Liquid fuels are needed and they can be made as sustainable as battery electric technology. Climate-neutral fuels can be blended seamlessly into the liquid fuel mix and can be compatible with the existing and future engine technologies. In an uncertain world, liquid fuels can strengthen Europe's energy security and protect against supply shocks through domestic production and storage. The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted the importance of securing strategic supplies in times of crisis. Storage is key to secure energy supply, and sustainable fuels represent a cost-efficient way to store huge amounts of clean energy, especially renewable electricity, thus contributing to the EU recovery. Together with these solutions, we can help European governments and regulators fully achieve the goal of climate neutrality, ensure a socially fair transition for those most affected, and accelerate the pace of change.
I guess there are a few questions from the audience in the meantime. I believe they're addressed to Eva and to Michael.
Yes, Franz, there is one question on e-vehicles. Someone said that from a thermodynamics point of view, direct electrification of transport is much more energy efficient than synthetic fuels. What is your answer to that?
Okay, the question to, I believe that's Michael on the technical side.
Yes, I'm pleased to take that question. As we described in our vision, we see a world where electricity and liquid fuels work together. So it's a combination of both technologies to serve requirements in different regions of Europe and make sure mobility becomes available to all European citizens in an affordable and especially sustainable way. So the answer to the question is it's a mix which we are foreseeing for 2050.
These are completing technologies, Michael, is your answer, I guess.
Yes.
Complementary technologies. Thanks for that. Thanks for the question. Daphne, I believe there was a second question.
Yeah, there are several other questions. There's one on e-fuels as well. Someone said that according to the view of his companies and of ACA, the Car Manufacturers Association in Europe, that e-fuels will not play a role by 2050. Can Michael or Eva clarify?
I think e-fuels are at the developing stage as of now. We're seeing many market activities in terms of associations growing today. I think in Germany, for example, there's an initiative, a public initiative into direction of e-fuels, and we are curious and really excited to see those initiatives working also together on EU levels and offering commercial scale solutions to the mobility world.
Thank you, Michael. Before we move to the next session of the reaction to the vision by the members in the panel here, a final question, Daphne?
Yeah, there is indeed one on high octane fuels. Someone is asking why we should move to E98 because according to the person, it hasn't been proved as being better for the climate than E95 or.
Okay, who is answering the question? Are there any additionals there, Daphne? Was it to anybody directed?
I think to Michael as well.
Michael, can you take that one as well, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've seen public studies out there reconfirming that higher octane fuels are contributing to CO2 emissions in a very significant way. And for this reason, obviously, Sustainable Fuels Europe is supporting the idea of establishing higher octane fuels. Higher octane fuels might mean, for example, RON 98 or even higher grades, RON 102.
Okay, thank you for.
Let me just maybe add to
Eva, please.
this very quickly. Thank you for this question. We actually run a number. We have a number of studies suggesting that the higher research octane number, which it's 95, 98, or even 102, the less CO2 emissions are actually emitted from the car. And on average is around 1% per 1 RON increase. So even 98 would bring additional benefits to answer very directly to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ewa. Thanks for the questions. Keep them coming, please. I think given our timing, it's pretty key that we get a response to the vision statements and the explanations as well as the questions that have been raised so far. In the panel today, again, we have Member of Parliament Angelika Niebler, we have Norbert Smeets from ISCC, and we have Diana Bakovsky from BEST. It has been mentioned a few times that we want to engage and continue our engagement with policymakers to make this all work going to the future. So, Mrs. Niebler, I would be very keen to get your initial reaction to the vision statement and maybe some of the questions that were already posed. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stockmann, dear panelists, dear ladies and gentlemen, joining this webinar. First of all, thanks for inviting me to attend this webinar as well. I think it's important to have that exchange at a very early stage. And let me start by commenting on the vision, by stressing, first of all, that I'm really happy and I welcome industry's commitment to the climate goals and to achieving the objectives of the Green Deal. And I have to stress that because that's not always the case, you know, that politics is moving ahead and industry is telling us that's the right path we have to follow. But I'm really, really happy to learn from you also at the beginning of this conference that you will also work on achieving the Paris Agreement goals and the Green Deal objectives. So I think that's really a very good start. And secondly, I think, and that has also been stressed by colleagues who just talked before, we need a joint effort. It's not only politics, it's not only industry, it's not only academia. So all stakeholders involved, I think, have to closely work together to achieve the goals. For my political group, I'm from the Christian Socialist Christian Union side. You know, we have actually two issues which are in all the discussions and debates very important for us. We think we need a goal for 2030 because 2050 it's far away. It's the next generation, and the ones at least in charge in politics, you know, they have to move for a more an objective, a goal which we can finally achieve and evaluate and assess as to whether it has been achieved. So we support the Commission's proposals that we have to go for the 55 achievement in 2030. And for us, it's important the path we are going to follow to achieve this goal. We think technological neutrality, that is a very, very important thing. And reflecting the questions which had already been asked, you see, is it the electricity car? Is it sustainable fuels? Is it hydrogen? Well, I think for politics, it's important that it's not us to decide. It's not us to decide what is technologically the best way to proceed. I think we should arrange for the right criteria for the framework, but then it's also up to industry. It's up to users' demands, what should be the way ahead. And I believe in hydrogen, I believe in electric cars, but I fully believe also in sustainable fuels. I think all three methodologies or all three technical achievements have a story to tell. We have a lot of improvements which are going in, and for us in politics, it's important to also provide for support as regards the legal framework, but also as regards, you know, investing in research and innovation. So that's what we have to achieve. But to bring it to the point, I think it's great that, you know, your industry, and it's not only the car industry, it's the automotive industry, it's the chemical industry, that you all are closely working together. I think that's exactly what we need, you know, not sticking within your own box, but, you know, really trying to find out where cooperation is best suited. And well, we should stay politics, academia, and industry in a very close discussion all the time, so that we can reschedule our framework, go for the right objectives, know where to invest, properly invest. So that is our job in politics, and I'm really happy that sustainable fuels vision is a real vision, shows the way they think is the right one. But again, I'd like to stress it's not the only way. Let's try or find out where we can combine. I fully agree what had been said, that, you know, the consumers' demands are so different. You know, it's a huge difference as to whether you live in a big city or in a rural area. Yeah. Connected from Bavaria, you know, next to Munich. So where I live, you know, the demand is completely different than in the center of Munich. So I think we should make a difference, differentiate, and not go for one size fits all solution. So maybe that's my first assessment, and well, looking forward to the next round of questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Dieber, for your first round and for your first tour, indeed, addressing the technology neutrality, the choice for the consumer, and the contribution that sustainable fuels makes to the energy mix, not only today, but also in the future. Thanks for that initial response. Norbert, without doing too much discredit to you, I'd like to go first to the other lady in the setting, Mrs. Bakowski. Could we have your reaction to the vision here, please?
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel. Very pleased to be here and also be able to present part of my work. So a reaction to your vision, I think just as Angelica said, it is really, really positive to see that industry puts up their own vision on how we can achieve zero carbon emissions by 2050, because it is really necessary to do this, and it is undisputable actually, and it is necessary for everybody to provide their own contributions to achieve these goals. And then I also agree that we will need multiple technologies and energy carriers to achieve that. And there will be a role for liquid fuels. although we must be aware that they can provide large contributions now, but their role will be shrinking over the years. I also think we need a comprehensive stakeholder alignment, and I think this does not only include like groups of policy and industry and academia, but we have, especially in the industry sector, we have to be aware of everybody who is acting in that field. And we should also take care to include agriculture, forestry, and biofuel producers in the group of actors that we address. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that initial reaction, and well said. I think it's the strength is in the collaboration, and I'm sure we will see some dynamics over time for the consumption of the various energy sources over time. Completing our first round of the reaction to the fission, Norbert Schmitz, I'd like to hand over to you to make your initial response to the fission, please.
So first of all, of course, also thanks from my side to allow me to participate in this interesting event. It's a pleasure, and I just want to highlight a few issues which came to my mind listening to the vision for 2050. That's three issues. One is rapid, to be rapid and realistic. The second one is a basket of options or different technologies, and the third one is a level playing field. First one, rapid. We need rapid solutions, and I think indeed setting targets for 2050, I can do it also without any problems. I could commit to every target for 2050 because I'm quite sure at that time I will not be taken responsible for it any longer. So I agree here also. We definitely need targets here for 2030. We have the 55%, and we have to look at how do we move ahead in the transport sector, taking into account that we have only 8% renewable energy in the transport sector. And if you compare that with the average of 18% in the European Union, we are falling behind. And falling behind, this is due to, you all know that, also due to the political discussions, the low ILUC and the ILUC debate and so on. So this has impacted the development in this sector. We have to be realistic. Michael mentioned that, and I think also Iwa in her presentation. We are looking here at solutions for the transport sector. But it's not only the transport sector. We are looking at other industrial applications. We see that many companies are currently implementing zero emission policies, looking for renewable feedstock, looking for renewable energy. So there will be an increasing demand for feedstock. And what is definitely the flavor of the month are the waste and residues, and everybody is very keen on it, but I doubt it that we will have enough waste and residues to fulfill all those requirements. And therefore, I would also look at agricultural and forestry feedstocks to be used for the respective ambitious targets. A level playing field. We should be technology open, I believe, and we should set the same sustainability requirements for all technologies, for all options we have at hand. I think it is not fair if we go ahead and if we deal with the conventional biofuels like in the Middle Ages with a witch hunt, and at the same time we have electric mobility, and nobody is discussing, or it just has started, but we are not taking into account the severe sustainability challenges we face in this sector as well. So this has to be taken as well into account. And therefore, I'm very much in favor for a technology open approach with a level playing field, with strict sustainability requirements, ecological and social sustainability requirements. And I believe if this works into this direction, that would be a good development. And the last statement I would like to make is with respect to Europe and the EU. I think there was also mentioned EU as in a leadership function. globally with respect to the decarbonization of the transport sector. From my point of view, the RED is definitely a global success story. It was the first time that sustainability requirements were put into a directive, and they are binding for entire sector, and we don't see this in other parts of the world. To that extent, other countries are looking at this model right now and are also trying to implement already. And we see, for example, as we are talking here about ethers, for example, here ISSC is recognized also by the Japanese government for the import of ethers and ethanol to be used in the fuel market in Japan. So based on the model which was developed in the context of the RED. And I think that was already enough for the first intervention. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Norbert. Thanks for addressing the rapidness, the sense of realism, and the level playing field that we need moving forward. But now we are recording this particular session, so if we do talk about targets, we may play them back in 20 years' time. You never know. I'm just looking at Daphne if there is any questions coming in the meantime before we move to the next session.
Yes, indeed. We have questions on the gasoline composition, petrol composition. Two questions. One is regarding whether ether producer will move to ETB production instead of MTBE by 2030 or 2050. And the other one is regarding the current blend walls in gasoline and the role of ethers in the current gasoline standard and oxygen levels.
Okay, can we start with letter Ewa? You may want to comment on to what extent the blends can be achieved.
Thank you. Actually, not sure where the question comes from which part of the world. However, in Europe, there is already a considerable amount of ETB being produced. On average, I think we believe up until 20% of fuel ethers are already from renewable sources. But whether the industry is going to move, I cannot answer on behalf of the entire of every company. However, we see already a shift today, and I see personally, I witnessed in the past couple of years that companies are thinking about the bio ethers, not only bio ETB but also bio MTB and other ethers as a way of increasing their bio part. And we see already customers in Europe interested in 100% bio ethers, which can be achieved and already being sold, although on a very small level at this point. So yes, the future is looking promising, and we see a lot of changes definitely.
Yes, change is there, that's for sure. Daphne, the other question, can you repeat it so we can see who is best positioned to answer, please?
I think the questions are quite similar. The second question was regarding the blend walls in gasoline and the role of ethers in if the current gasoline standards and oxygen levels remain the same.
Okay, is anybody volunteering to pick up that question in the panel? Michael, technical question, maybe for you you can address it.
If we look at oxygen levels in, let's say, typical European gasoline specifications, we're talking about 3.7% as of today. Nevertheless, we are excited to see changes also on that end, and potentially oxygenate levels will be increasing over the next couple of years when new fuel quality directives will be implemented.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Thanks for giving that correct, good answer.
If I just add, we will be happy to take this question also offline to further understand exactly what the participant meant.
Yeah.
But indeed, we agree we are 3.7%, and we are still fitting into this those brackets. So we are happy to understand further the question. We are happy to take it offline.
Great, and thanks, Daphne, for registering that request here from Eva. So we're going to move on to the next question, and the question is: to what extent do we see sustainable liquid fuels playing a role in achieving the reduction of emission targets going forward? Mrs. Bakowski, could you start with this particular issue for you, please?
Sure. I think it is really an enormous challenge if you want to reach 55% greenhouse gas emission reduction in the transport sector by 2030. And this really cannot be stated too often. It is an enormous challenge. And if you just rely on current policies alone, you will not get there. So it takes a while until the electric vehicles are on board, until we have all the charging infrastructure there, and also until we have renewable electricity, which we need. So this cannot be done overnight. And we had a project, a joint project between the IEA Bioenergy TCP and the Advanced Motor Fuels TCP. It's called Transport Decarbonization, and we really took a look at this. So here we just calculated based on current policies, and the example here is Finland. So you would say they have very forward-looking and aggressive targets and policies actually for their transport sector. If you would just do nothing, then you would have the orange or red line on the top. If you add electric vehicles, and here we have 2030, this is the contribution in greenhouse gas emission reductions that could be gained from that. And the next one, the yellow line, is then efficiency gains in there as well. And then the role of biofuels is the green line. So there is the current base case biofuels is the light green, and the other one is a maximum biofuel scenario. So you can see that in 2030, even in Finland, it is very difficult to have a large contribution from electric vehicles, but you still have to really very much rely on liquid fuels, and biofuels should have a major role in this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bakowski. I think it has to do with the magnitude of Finland being more or less rural, except for Helsinki, so that may play a key role. On this chart, is this chart available to the audience later on?
Yes, for sure. Yes, we will make this available. And just to say, it's not about Finland only. We did the analysis also for Sweden and Germany, and pictures are quite alike. And we did it for the US and for Brazil. We do see differences there, which have more to do with how they deal with their transport sectors and with the emerging economy in Brazil, for example.
Yeah.
But this relationship between liquid energy carriers that can be used in today's vehicles and electricity, which has to build up the new infrastructure, including the vehicles, that's more or less the same for all the countries.
Thank you for that addition. A very interesting perspective, Mrs. Bakowski. Mrs. Niebler, any views on your perspective for the contribution of sustainable fuels in achieving the CO2 reductions, please?
Well, it was very helpful to get this chart. So thank you very much, for that explanation. And I'd like also to support the assessment that we have really tough, ambitious goals set for 2030. And I think the chart quite clearly shows here. Well, let's work on all fronts. Let's work on every technology, and try to move things forward. And well, my role here as a politician in this webinar is to a large extent to listen and to learn, what is needed. Yeah, I'd like to learn, what we can do in order to also support, initiatives coming up from industry, joint efforts. Apart from, investing in R&D, we wanna make the Green Deal happen, and we have to know what's necessary for that. Yeah? It's always very difficult if you ask me a question, are we going to achieve this goal? Well, I think for politicians, it's important, in particular in Europe, to look ahead and to lead the path where we want to go. Yeah? But but then, you know, how to make it becoming a reality, that's a long way forward. And for that, we need, I think, a really, really close exchange. The transport sector accounts for nearly 1/4 of greenhouse gas emissions. That's huge. So I think we have to look into that sector. And we have maybe, and that's a question I'd like to bring into, you know, is there any difference between road transport, aviation, shipping? So if I look at our ETS system, you know, shipping is not included. Aviation is only within Europe, but not outside included. So, well, that are the questions which have been posed by us. Do we have to be more progressive on that? And what is also very interesting for me, and maybe we can also address that, you know, to the long-term perspective. I think we have to go for a solution, or for a mix of solutions which are at the end of the day affordable also for the consumers who have to pay. For industry, we have to have a level playing field. We have all over the world, you know, we cannot allow that our industry, you know, is following the Green Deal objectives, but at the end of the day, you know, all our jobs are going to be lost in Europe. So we have to see that at the end of the day, there is a business case which is also, you know, which can be paid by the ones who are going to be in charge. So these are the questions. And my feeling is sustainable liquid fuels, you know, will play an important role. I fully rely, and I can tell you, I have a lot of contacts. My region is full of industry in Bavaria, north, south, east, and west. I'm looking into the fabrics. I talk to a lot of our engineers, a lot of our people in academia, and I'm always fascinated in learning how bright our people are. I have to stress that we are not talking a lot about our people. You know, we have so brilliant people all over, and I'm fully confident then, if they move on in their research and innovation initiatives, you know, I think we will find good solutions in all directions. And yes, liquid fuels, I'm persuaded that they will play a very important role. To what extent that will be find out. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Diebler. Before we go to Norbert in answering this question, I think the audience would also be interested in your views on the stability of the regulatory framework going forward, because the innovation and creativeness of the industry is appreciated, but if regulations will change over time to be more stringent, that is something that sometimes hampers the developments going forward. So something you can say to the audience on that respect?
Yeah, that's a very important point. Well, the only thing I'd like to stress, we have quite a lot of regulation in every field. We passed the climate law just a couple of weeks ago. This is now in discussion with the member states and the council. So I think we will finish that until the end of the year. And you may have seen that the Commission is already coming up with a lot of communications, a lot of initiatives. So they are preparing the path now. And well, the plan is that until the middle of next year, you know, all the legislative proposals are going to be on the table. That is, you know, where Parliament, where the member states are coming in, that we have, you know, we have to check every sector, every issue, where every policy is addressed to the Green Deal objective. So let's see, you know, what we need to amend, what we need to modify in our current regulation. We will have a huge political debates in that respect. I have a lot of colleagues who think electricity, you know, the electric vehicle is the overall solution for everything. I do not agree to that approach, not at all. But that is then a political debate which we have to follow. And, you know, following this debate, you know, we'll find out how the regulation is going to be. And we have to see what's happening in the member states as well. And again, yes. I think, you know, if you look how different the situation in the member states is, you know, you mentioned the example of Finland. So Germany was mentioned, the south, the east, the island, Malta, Cyprus, different situations. So it's really, so please don't move to one size fits all solutions. That will definitely not fulfill the objectives. And well, and I cannot more in precise tell you how we are going to mend the regulation, but I'm always I think, you know, all the communications coming out now from the Commission, everyone should carefully consider, but because that's already the basis of the thinking which way to go, and then we'll see what comes up in the next couple of months.
It is. We'll make it part of the dialogue. Thanks for your answer. I really appreciate it. Norbert Schmitz, could you please throw in your contribution on this particular question, please? And the question is, what do you see as the contribution of sustainable fuels in achieving the greenhouse gas emission reduction targets?
I think what Dinah has shown, the slide very much confirms also what we believe, or what I believe. Biofuels will have to play a major role into decarbonization of the transport sector. It will not be possible without biofuels. And when we talk about biofuels, of course, we have the conventional biofuels and the so-called advanced biofuels. There was also a question about the advanced biofuels here in the chat. If you look at the conventional biofuels, I think we have to take into account that we have seen tremendous improvements with respect to GHG performance in the past 10 years. It's incredible. We started with relatively low GHG improvements, and now we have fuels which achieve very high GHG improvements. And they are on the market, and they are the overwhelming share in the biofuel market. If you look at the so-called advanced biofuels, you know, they are defined by the Annex 9 feedstock, Annex 9 Part A. They so far contribute only a very small portion to the entire market. And we have already a few hundred companies here at ISSC using this Annex 9 Part A feedstock, but the volumes which are produced are compared to the rest of the biofuels are relatively small. And this is also confirmed by the Commission. The Commission talks about nearly 70 million tons oil equivalents of sustainable biofuels in the EU, and around 3.9 million ton oil equivalents for the Annex 9 biofuels. But this is mainly UCO and animal fat, which are not considered as advanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmitz. Very good dimension again. So I think we've gone around this question well enough. I'm just checking with Daphne if there's any questions from the audience before we move on.
Yes, indeed. I have a question for Angelika Niebler. Are there specific ideas aiming at maritime and aviation to, I guess, to decarbonize these sectors?
Okay, over to you, Mrs. Niebler.
Yes, thanks a lot. Yes, there are. You know, I think we should go for enlarging the ETS system and include also aviation and shipping into the ETS system. That's one approach, which my political group is favoring. You know, we are looking what's happening in the member states. So my home country, Germany, we moved ahead. You know, we extended the ETS system now also for buildings and for transport as a whole. And we are looking what comes out of that. But I think, well, I'm in favor of market-oriented solutions, like my political group. And that's why we are very strong in, you know, trying to figure out as to whether the ETS might also be the right instrument, you know, for aviation and for shipping. I hope.
Thank you for that answer.
Thank you.
I think that that answers the question. Daphne, any more questions from the audience at this stage?
Yeah, there's another question regarding the maritime world. There's a question regarding the International Maritime Organization Sulfur 2020 regulation. Just to know, is Sustainable Fuels working on this initiative?
Yes, thanks for the question.
If the question is dedicated to Sustainable Fuels Europe, our trade organization, obviously our focus area is gasoline for automotive industry. So typically not maritime shipping fuels. Nevertheless, it's obviously a touch point. And especially if we look back over the last 1.5 years, it was a topic, in particular the IMO 2020 was a topic which impacted and affected the whole, I would say, refining and fuels industry.
Thank you, Michael. Daphne, I think there was quite a few questions coming in for the audience. Let's take one more.
Yeah, there was one for Mrs. Bakowski. Do you also have calculated scenarios with synthetic fuels?
Yes, we have. And I can see there's really a couple of questions coming in on the slide that I showed. So we will have a webinar on the entire project, and it was a large project, on the 17th of November. And there we will be going into all the details. So we also did a scenario where we just theoretically assumed that we would use electrofuels to support the decarbonization of the road transport sector, and then calculated how much green electricity would we need for that and how much CO2 emissions would have to be captured for that. And we found that this will be challenging for several countries. And so that's what we did on the electrofuel scenario. And for all the other questions, I'll be happy to answer them after the offline probably, or in the end if there should be more time.
Thank you for that offer, Mrs. Bakowski. And there's quite some interest in your charts as well. So I'm sure there will be interest in your webinar as a follow-up. So well done. I'd like to move on to the next question because that provides another alternative angle to the issue, in that we are developing hydrogen and we are developing electricity as alternative sources for our mobility in Europe and to achieve the climate neutrality goals in transport. But to what extent do you see this being available at sufficient quantities and at competitive prices if you look at that whole mix? Could I start with you, Mrs. Bakowski, since you're still on the picture here? Thank you.
Good. So I doubt that we will be able to support our current transport mobility in 2050 if we want to go for zero greenhouse gas emissions. And also I doubt that it will be as affordable as it is at the moment. So I'm quite sure that mobility will be more expensive in the future. I do think that having a competitive price for certain fuels will be the role of policy to create that by bringing the right regulations in order, because otherwise we will not be able to compete with the fossil fuels. They've built this infrastructure already decades ago. So it's very hard to come up with a competing infrastructure at the same price. And then as for hydrogen and electricity in particular, I think these are really universal energy carriers. You can use them in a lot of different applications. And the transport sector is one of those that can make good use of liquid energy carriers. So we will have to optimize where we use which fuel. And I guess as long as possible, we will try to have liquid fuels in the picture in transport, just to free up electricity and hydrogen also, and especially hydrogen for other applications.
Yeah, so you see them as sort of indeed complementary, helping one another to move forward collectively, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and it's an enormous challenge. We don't only want to decarbonize the transport sector, but our entire society.
Yeah, that's the direction clearly with all the Green Deal targets set. I saw some reaching out towards the policymakers. So without duplicating the previous answer, Mrs. Niebler, anything to add to that dimension from the policymakers' corner?
Well, maybe addressing the issue on hydrogen, I think we have also huge potential on hydrogen as regards the road transport. I think in particular for heavy vehicles, this is an alternative. So coming from my region, we have a huge hype in buses now, you know. Everyone is going for building up infrastructure on hydrogen buses and heavy vehicles. So I think this is an alternative for that kind of transport. As regards aviation, well, I think their sustainable fuels might play really an important role in future, so we should stick on that. And as had been stressed before, I think investing in infrastructure, actually, that's an issue. Also, we have not yet talked a lot in Parliament, for instance, about the question where is the electricity coming from? Yeah? If you want to go for that huge transformation, which is needed for achieving our climate goals, I think we need more than 10 times the electricity which we are using right now. And the question is where that is coming from. Only from renewable, I think this will not be the case. Yeah? At least not for 2030, and 2050 is also very challenging. I agree that, we also have to look at what's happening as regards forestry, as regards agriculture, what can we take as a feedstock from there? I'm in line with that. But again, infrastructure will be of vital importance. Where do we invest? What are we going also to build up? I think, if that is only market driven, this will not fly. So I think, that there we need a political decision, and I'm quite confident that next year we have to clearly show which kind of building up infrastructure we are going to support. And for me, it's important as a European politician that we find at least some commitment within the member states, so that not one member state is completely different from the other one, because mobility is all over Europe. And if I'm buying an electric car, I should have no problems in using the chargers in all other member states of the European Union. So that's easily said, but very difficult to achieve.
Thank you. You're already anticipating the next question coming up. What are the hurdles? But I think also one of the hurdles you highlight clearly is the need for green electricity, not only for the electrification of vehicles, but also to the industry, and the chemicals industry is large. So thanks for adding those dimensions. Mr. Smit, Mrs. Niebler is touching upon the differences across the EU member state countries that need to be harmonized for a level playing field. But maybe on this question, you, from a global perspective in your company, could also look at how that shows to Europe versus the East and the West on the globe.
Indeed, interesting question. With respect to hydrogen, I share the doubts Mrs. Niebler has just pointed out, and I also believe, but I'm also quite sure that the members of sustainable fuels, that they know much better what kind or what volumes of hydrogen are available and how they could be used, or if there are sufficient volumes available for the transport sector. But I would put a big question mark behind it. What I would like to highlight an issue here, which I see is that quite often those, let's say, future technologies, or those hydrogen or electricity, those technologies are being used in the discussions, and being used to postpone certain decisions or certain developments in a certain market. And I think this is a certain risk that maybe required measures are not being implemented at the time being. Hydrogen so far plays only a role in our European activities. There are some activities also in the North American market. Asia is not very relevant at the time being. We have some requests from Latin America, but it's mainly focused so far on the European activities. So there's an increasing interest in hydrogen, and we are working on this, of course, in the context of various Power-to-X solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smit. Loud and clear. Thanks for adding the Western and Eastern dimensions to this conversation. Daphne, I'm looking to see if there's any questions from the audience at this stage.
Yes, I see two questions on sustainable fuels emissions. The first one is regarding NOx emissions. The person asked whether the NOx emissions from sustainable fuels will, because the fuels will be even more efficient, whether it will lead to increased engine NOx emissions, requiring the use of more effective exhaust after treatment. And there's another question which asks whether we could move to ETBE saving that can save up to 60% of greenhouse gases, because the requirement now under the RED II is 50%.
Okay, thank you for those two questions. Could I ask Ewa to give an answer to the NOx, if that's technically feasible at the moment, and also on the ETBE, please?
Thank you for this interesting question. Indeed, the NOx emissions have been in the center of the attention in the transport sector, and we see that they have been decreasing drastically with the new technologies. With regards to impact of sustainable fuels on NOx, I think NOx, sorry, we still need to evaluate this. Evaluate this impact in more detail. We have also technical member if online if a more technical response is needed. If not, we are happy to respond to it later. On the regarding the move to ETBE up to 60%, I'm not sure if Michael would like to add something on this particular topic, but as far as I am aware, it's already happening. So that's my understanding of this.
Michael, anything to add?
No, I think Eva brought it to the point.
Thank you, Ewa. Thank you. Okay, then I take it these were the questions for now. Again, the audience may ask questions also to our email address. So that's provided as info@petrochemistry.eu.com. So that's in the instructions of the website. So keep the questions coming, please. And thanks for your engagement. We're going to the final questions in terms of what the hurdles are for the solutions to get to the CO2 target reductions in relation to transport. Mrs. Bakowski, could I ask you to start with answering that question on the hurdles?
Yes, fine. I mean, I'm looking very much from a biofuels perspective to all of this, and the biofuels industry keeps repeating the same messages all the time, like we want to have a long-term stable policy, and we want to have specific targets for transport. We want to have specific sub-targets for advanced biofuels, things like that, and we need support for the biofuels production demonstrations and for R&D. I do have two more newer messages, or not just the standard messages. One is that I do agree that what automakers are calling for, if we would have EU emission regulations on the cars that would acknowledge the contribution of the renewable energy carrier that is being used, then they would be really happy to embrace biofuels in very high blends, because that would be a very good solution to reach their fleet average emissions, which they have to reach. And second here is, and there maybe you could pull up that last slide, which I have. I think we should turn the tables, because we have been successful in having more renewable energy in our transport fuel mix. That has worked out well with the existing regulations, but still we are not really successful in bringing down the amount of fossil fuel that is still being used. And so here I took support from Eric van den Heuvel, who is in the Dutch Biofuels Network, who provided a slide here. And you can see that the fossil fuel is not decreasing, but it has to decrease. And I think we should really put a firm target and say in 2050, there will be no fossil fuels in the transport sector anymore, because that would give really clarity to all the actors. And we need targets, of course, for 2030 and 2040 as well. And so that's hurdles and solutions from my point of view.
Thank you for sharing. And again, this chart will be available to the audience, but I'm pretty sure, Mrs. Niebler, you want to give an initial response to that particular chart. Thank you, Mrs. Bakowski. Mrs. Niebler.
I'm unmuting myself. Yeah. Well, we are in the middle of a political discussion now, as to whether we should, clearly define when exactly to find out fossil fuels. We had this discussion in my home region, my home country. We have that on the European level, and I have not yet finally made up my mind, to be honest, because one issue which had, I think, not been addressed also today is the issue of global competitiveness of our industry. And we have to see what's happening in all the other regions in the world. 50% of all CO2 emissions are coming from Chinese operating their coal mines all over the world. Yeah, so I think this is something we should also concentrate a little bit, not only looking at Europe, but also trying to find out what we as Europeans can do in order also to motivate other regions in the world, at least the big emitters like the US and China, to also follow our path. And for that, we need technologically, we need good ideas. We need the transformation. We have to take people on board. I think climate change also has a social dimension, which I think is really, really important. We are in the middle of a crisis. Corona. We are Germany. We are discussing today in Berlin as to whether we have to go for a partial lockdown again, with huge implications in a lot of sectors, not in all of them, but in a lot of sectors. And people are losing their jobs, full stop. And, all that, we have to take as politicians all that into consideration and find the right balance. And that's why I'm not so happy in saying, so as of that time, full stop, we have to get rid of all fossil fuels. That's easy, yeah. But what are I'm not saying it's not the right approach, because orientation by politicians needs some clear indications. I agree on that. But before doing that, please carefully consider, what implications that is going to have on society, on our jobs, on our global competitiveness. And if at the end of the day, we can clearly make the cut, then we should do it. Yeah, but please not isolate it in Europe, but also have a look what's happening around the world. Because we have to care for the people. Thank you.
Thank you for that honest answer, Mrs. Niebler. And I think that indeed we need to find the next level of detail in achieving the plan. And I also see that the Chinese are not ignoring what we're doing here, because they've made a pledge recently as well to be carbon neutral by 2060. I'm not sure that will be a carbon copy of what we're doing here, but at least the signal is coming through. Thank you for that. Mr. Smeets, in finalizing the answer to this question, over to you.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that already. Science-based, clear and fair rules for the different technologies, and then apply a framework, a sustainability framework, which has to be fulfilled also with clear and comprehensive rules, for example, for the calculation of greenhouse gas emissions along the supply chains. Major issue, if you look at recycled carbon fuels or also RIFNBOs, which we have not discussed a lot about it today, quite a few challenges with respect to those topics, and they have to be cleared before we will see the respective investments in those technologies. And then I believe in the meantime we should look at easy to catch targets, which help us to get emissions down. One example is heavy duty transport. We here in Germany, we have toll exemption for natural gas powered heavy duty trucks. The question is, why are they not switching to biomethane? Would be easy to move to biomethane, and then you would achieve immediately a tremendous GHG emission saving. This is difficult due to regulative framework conditions. Those could be addressed. If you address those requirements, then you could start immediately reducing emissions in this difficult sector of the road transport. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smeets, for answering that question and providing an alternative to that route. I find it fascinating. Thank you for that. We start to reach the clock of 3 this afternoon, so time flies. I'd like to give the reaction to Eva and Michael on the panel statements before we move to the closure of the meeting. Eva and Michael, any response to the issues raised by the panel, please?
First of all, I would like to say thank you for the very open and constructive discussion. I think we've heard positions from very different angles of the industry and heard positions from different stakeholders, which is very critical for us to proceed with our vision. If I review statements from Ms. Niebler, I think it's very critical and key to work around neutrality of technology. If we think about green energy and availability, I think that's also a very key point. And last but not least, the competitiveness of the European landscape in a global market. If I review comments and statement from Dina, I think collaboration between the industry and different stakeholders is essential and is the basis to be successful. Norbert emphasized the importance of establishing midterm targets. Obviously, we were pitching the Vision 2050. Nevertheless, it is obviously a route to take, and a route means also milestones in between. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Thank you for summarizing that. Good credit to the panelists there. Thank you so much. Ewa, for you to round off for this afternoon, addressing the panelists and the issues that came to the service.
Well, thank you so much for joining, to the panelists especially. I found it quite refreshing to have this debate about our not only immediate but our long-term future. And I'm very happy to see that all participants actually see the role for the liquid fuels moving ahead, not only in 2030 but 2050. We do have a considerable amount of work to be done, and just to finally state it finally and again, I hope this is the beginning of collaboration between different industry sectors, because we do need that moving forward. We do share the same objectives of making our fuels carbon neutral and also reaching the carbon neutrality target in 2050. And we do see, of course, all the technologies that were mentioned by all the speakers as very important moving forward. And I hope that this is the beginning of further discussion on how we can actually implement our vision moving ahead.
Thank you, Ewa. Change, energy, and dialogue are the key components in the mix going forward. So I'd like to thank Dina Markowski, Norbert Smeets, Angelika Niebler for the key contribution in the panel discussion, Michael and Ewa for your leadership in this, and I'd like to participants for their continued participation during this 1.5 hour. I'm really impressed. We'll get you the slides, we'll get you the video, and I'd like to thank the technicians for today's support. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I wish you a good and safe day. Keep mobile, keep safe, and see you later. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.